You're listening to The Affiliates, a podcast that features stories of entrepreneurs and young leaders who are changing the world for better every single day. My name is Alok Rathod, and I'm a film producer best known for projects such as Choice and The Doorbell. I'm sitting down with leaders to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how to make an impact. In this episode, Tabitha talks about switching career from IT to design, her experience of working in India, and her funny adventures of traveling in Mumbai local trains. This is part 1 of the episode. Welcome to the show, Tabitha.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Great. So, what's your story?
Okay, so my name's Tabitha. I'm a textile designer. I am originally from the UK and I moved to Bombay just over 12 months ago. So I work for a large textile manufacturer that works with lots of brands around the world and I get to design for them. So, yeah.
So, there's a huge debate around education these days. A lot of young professionals say that they don't really need a degree and everything that they need to succeed in a job more or less is taught during that training phase. So, what are your thoughts on it? Like, how did your education help you switch career into design?
Okay, so I suppose there's like lots of different layers to that, really. Obviously, my education has really helped in the respect that it's allowed me to gain access into a design position because the majority of the positions require you to have to be up to a skill level of having a degree. But that said, I was really skeptical about going to uni to begin with, and also I see mostly because I see a lot of people. I don't know if it's the same in India, but in the UK, quite a lot of people that I knew just went to university just for the sake of going to university, and they would just choose a course that they weren't particularly that excited about. And for me, I knew that if I was going to spend that much money on getting my education, then it was going to be something that I really, really was passionate about and that I wanted to do. So there was like a lot of reflection my end on that, and also coming from like obviously studying a design course, I think there has to be a certain level of skill to begin with. I'm very lucky in the sense that I'm very good at I'm a very good artist, and that was always the driving force. It was never like, oh, I knew what I wanted to do. It was more, I'm really, really good at drawing and painting. How can I make this into a career? So, yeah, like I suppose in that respect, it's kind of like a mixture of like education was important, but then there's other things that, like industry experience as well. Like, so I suppose my degree taught me the fundamental skills that I would need in the industry. So quite a lot of these design courses in the UK will, because the textiles are such a varied industry. You have knit, print, woven textiles, embroidery, and I'm sure there's others that I've perhaps missed. But I specialised in print and embroidery, and I'm now in a job role that I do woven textiles and embroidery. So it really, you learn all of these skills, but then I think actually then after you finish, you then go on to refine them and specialise in, you take on jobs where you actually get to do what you want to do. So,
So, but you didn't really start in design. Like, you were working in IT, I guess?
oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so I did study design, but then after I finished my degree, I was kind of having a bit of a personal dilemma of whether I actually wanted to go into design, mostly because anyone who works in the creative industry will understand that it's a really, really competitive industry to be in. And I was in this kind of predicament where, as a new graduate, I needed to earn some money, and I was really struggling to get my first design position. And I don't have a background where I have family that I can rely on for money. So I was like, right, I need to sort this out. There's a problem that needs to be solved. And I ended up working for a company called Dine, which has now just been taken on by Oracle. And I worked there for just under 2 years, and it was conflicting on so many levels. um, but I met some really amazing people, and it gave me the fundamental skills that I needed for knowing that if ever I start up my own business, I know that I would be able to handle the sales side of it, because it was in business development that I worked. Which I think is like a freelancer in the creative industry, is you've really got to have that drive, because you need to bring in, you know, those projects to do. They don't always come to you. So, but it was really conflicting, because I was when I worked there, I think I was 23, maybe 24, and I was earning a very good salary for my age, and I just moved into Brighton, which is a city in the UK on the seaside, and it was great. It was loads of fun, and I had all like this independence and freedom. And but as I developed more into this role, it was really going against my gut instinct of what I felt I should be doing. And then I was faced with this kind of like moral, well, like my own inner compass was saying, like, you know, this isn't right, you need to change. And it meant starting again completely. And I literally had to do just that. I had to I quit my job. I literally just woke up. I took a week's holiday, and then, because I was really unhappy, I actually I came off the phone one day and just cried. And then my manager at the time, he was like, "Tabs, you know, like, are you okay? What's going on?" And we went into a room and we spoke about it. And I decided at that point that I needed to take a week off, so I did. And then after having a week off, I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. I need to go back into design. So I just quit, and I worked. Had like a little side thing going. I worked in an elderly residence home, working night shifts for a little while, whilst I rebuilt my portfolio, because my portfolio from university was really out of date and it wasn't current, and it needed to be refined. So I worked like really, really hard to get that done, and then after about 6 months, it was ready, and I was in a position where I could start interviewing and showing it to people. And the first couple of interviews that I had, I got some, you know, I didn't get the job, but I got really good feedback, and that was always a bit of a knockback, and it was a bit gutting, because I was like, come on, like, you know, like, I need to actually have proof that, almost that validation, like, I suppose, that all of, like, taking that step and that risk was worth it. And then the position to move to India came up, and I was just like, had no ties, and I was like, well, yeah, I want to go live in India. So I interviewed it, and it was really weird, because I had a feeling. I just, you know, like sometimes you just get feelings that something is right, and that you're on the right, kind of in the right path. And then I went for the interview, and that said, I didn't feel like it was a very good interview, but they came back. The feedback was that actually they grilled me a lot. That it was, you know, they really liked me and they liked my portfolio. And then I had to re-interview again. And it was, yeah, I got offered the position, and it kind of all went from there. And within about 8 weeks, I moved to India.
Yeah, that's great. Because when I reflect on my journey, I sort of had a similar career trajectory. I did not start in filmmaking or like any of the creative fields. Like, I was trained in dancing when I was in college, and I was studying business, and I was studying software design. So it's like a lot of stuff was happening at the same time. Uh, but I started out with JP Morgan, which is an investment bank, and I was working with a lot of bankers around the world. And like, you know, I had good money for my age, and like, you know, there was possibility of working in other offices around the world. And you know, there were lot many things that could have happened if I would have stayed longer. But I just thought after a year that, okay, you know, being the kind of person I am, I like to kind of, you know, take things forward. and not just be stuck in a zone for a time.
Yeah.
So I'm always kind of like, very anxious to try new stuff, see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And I figured that, okay, having a job might not give me that kind of freedom or flexibility. So that's when, like, the first seeds of entrepreneurship were kind of like sown in my mind that, okay, maybe I need my own business to do such kind of things rather
Yeah.
than working for someone else. And yeah, so like one thing led to the other, and I kind of quit my job just find one fine day.
It's so
And
funny.
then like,
It's like clear, like you read these articles of I quit my job one day, and like at the same time, though, I do think there's a lot of you read these articles, and there is a lot of things like people that say just do it, but it was like one of the scariest decisions. I don't know, obviously, from your perspective, how you felt, but
yeah, and it could be like, I mean, you are clear on your end, but the people around you kind of like, put so much pressure on you that, oh, you're
yeah,
working for a big bank, you're
yeah,
earning so
yeah,
well, and you're like, how
yeah.
hard it is to get in.
This is
And now you're
yeah,
thinking of leaving the job
yeah.
just like that
Yeah,
to do what? Like make films and like,
yeah.
give money to poor people? Like, no.
I can really relate to that because I had a lot of people around me, mostly family, that were like, and I think they were just worried. It didn't come from a place of like, it's not that they didn't want me to be happy in pursuing something that I wanted, but I think that they saw that this job that I was in was a really good opportunity, and they were really concerned. And quite a lot of them, when I quit, they were a bit like, like what the hell? But that, if anything, made me even more determined because I was just like, no, I'm good at this. I should be doing this. Like, and actually, one of my old housemates, like, she was really, really like inspiring in this way. Like, she's always been the kind of person that will just do, no matter what people say. And she was one of the few people that were like, that's like kind of confirmed. She was like, no, like you shouldn't be working for like in like a tech company doing sales. She was like, you're far too talented. Like you should be doing this. Like you're creative. And I think that's actually a lot of with creative people. We're always faced with that kind of like dilemma because there's a lot of kind of shade. Like I don't know if this is correct, and like you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong. But like I feel like there's almost like when you say you're creative and you want to do something that's perhaps like not that you have your careers that like engineering, being a doctor, like perhaps doing something in law that are very much established, and people look at them and they think, yeah, that's a really good job. And then like when you say to people, oh yeah, like I get it all the time. Like they're like, what do you do? I'm like, I paint for a living. And then they're like, is that a real job? And I'm like, well, yeah, like I love it.
So let's try to understand your creative process a bit. What is your process of developing a great design?
So I guess it depends what I'm working on. It varies depending on what the project is. So it always generally begins by market research, I would say. So within textiles, it's always we follow the trends. So generally, you as a designer, because you see so much imagery, you can kind of you have like a natural instinct of what trends are like occurring in the industry. So then you group those by mood boarding, and then generally like see which ones inspire you the most, and then you'll develop it into like you'll start with the artworks, and then once you've created the artworks, you'll then start to put that into a design, and then obviously I generally will decide on a colorway sometimes afterwards, or I'll have a colorway in my head by going on what my mood boards are kind of showing me, and I'll then just need to make little tweaks and adjustments. But it really does depend on what kind of project you're working on. Sometimes I can work with clients and they know exactly what they want, and they'll come to me with an idea, and then I understand it, and we'll just do it really quickly. And because the fact that they've been so clear in what they want, like you just know. So yeah, really, that's quite vague. But
Was there a design or a project where you derived an inspiration from, like, an unconventional object or an unconventional idea that you tried and it worked, or at least it gave you like a new perspective or a new direction in terms of your approach?
I think that's all the time, especially so quite a lot of the work that I do in the studio is all hand painted, and I think you're constantly trying out like new ways of painting and drawing and playing with materials just to try and get like a different effect to use in a design. Just because after a while you learn you learn what style of artwork or what style of painting will like, and what media to use will give a certain look. And sometimes sometimes I can see like an artwork and it might just be like by by like some random artist, but I'll really like the way that they've used the media in it, and that will inspire me to paint in a certain way, and I can transfer that into like a design. But it depends.
Yeah, and I think the way my creative process works is where I sort of like scribble down ideas as and when it comes. So every morning I set aside an hour for just ideas to flow. So I'll just listen to different kinds of music and see what kind of thoughts come to my mind, and I just scribble down like 2 or 3 sentences on each page, and then I try to develop whether I can build a story around it or not. So a lot of times my ideas come from purely like some idea, some impulse, some thought that I just wrote down, and it kind of led to more layers or elements to the story, and it sort of made sense when you see it in like 3 different parts, so like beginning, middle, and end. uh, a lot of time it has been like deriving inspiration from works of other big directors or filmmakers. So like a slight kind of inspiration that I took for my first film as a director was that I'm a big fan of Christopher Nolan, and he used a red font for Inception, one of the movies that he directed. And to a large extent, is the reason why I'm a filmmaker. It's a pretty cool movie, by the way.
And Inception, I've seen Inception. It is very good.
And it's like he uses that red text in all of his posters. So I thought that okay, maybe like I aspire to be like him in future. Okay, so let me just begin by having like a red font in my first film, hoping that someday I might reach his level of genius.
Yeah, a little homage to him.
Yeah, so it kind of like because I didn't go to film school, there is no script or a structure or a framework that I follow. But the beauty of that is that inspiration can come from anywhere.
Yeah, completely.
Inspiration or any idea or any thought could sort of more or less be worked around to build a coherent narrative. And I guess maybe that's the reason I will never go to film school, because I feel it might make me sort of a bit dumb in that sense. That
Too regimented. Do you feel like it would make you too regimented?
Yeah, I mean, it will just give you like a certain rules to follow. Okay, and I've not been good with following rules in my life so far.
Okay.
So I mean, I don't break them, but I bend them a lot. So, but yeah, it's great to kind of understand that I feel all the creative processes are same. It's just that the journey that they take from beginning till the end, that's different, and that's what makes it exciting. But more or less, every sort of like creative person derives like some combination of knowledge, observation, and like trying to grow a little bit with each project, kind of mindset.
I feel like you have to, as a creative, you have to kind of balance like obviously you can't like inspiration has to come from somewhere, but then you also have to for me as a textile designer, I have to know that what I'm creating is commercial, because otherwise it won't sell. So I have to, there's limitations with every client that I work with and every product. Like at the moment, obviously working with I can't say their name, but the large textile manufacturer. The brands that they work with, they're all home textile brands. So that's like drape and upholstery fabric, and you have to think about the end user and how they're going to use that in their home, and they're not going to want something like sometimes, not all the time, and not at the moment as well currently, but quite a lot of people will play safe with their interiors. They tend to get a bit more experimental with their clothes, but that's changing actually, I believe anyway. So you have to think about what you're creating, and then you have to make it commercial. So you can be inspired by something, but then ultimately it's got to be commercial. And within woven textiles especially, there's like limitations on colour that you can use because of cost. Like I get that all the time. So I really like bright, colourful stuff, and I always try and put lots of colour into my designs. But that's something that I've had to learn that isn't always. And I feel like it's made me a better designer actually, because it's working in a way that wasn't actually like my natural direction. So now I've got, by decreasing my levels of colour that I use, it's actually worked better in some ways. So. But yeah, I think there's always going to be different ways of how people approach stuff, but it does start with just kind of homing in on what really inspires you.
So, how has the people around you, your friends and family, inspired or influenced you?
Well, I guess in terms of it's basically my family and generally my friendship group to begin with, no one's really creative. My elder sister is, but generally I didn't come from a background where I had other artists and creatives there that I could be wow, look at them doing something. And my eldest sister, we're quite close in years, and we actually went to university together, so we actually had our pursuit of creative stuff at the same time. So I suppose in terms of, she's someone that I look up to, and I have we support each other. She's got an insane amount of drive. She's really tenacious. But yeah, I'm really, really good at what she does. She's a hair and makeup artist. So, she does lots of creative freelance work, and she ran her business alongside, she started her business alongside going to university, and she's got 2 little children as well. So she is a force, but she's amazing. But I guess in terms of having just a solid friendship group that you can kind of go back to, when you're, for instance, when things aren't going so well, and especially if you're trying to get into a really competitive industry, that's so good to have. There's always been times where I've been able to go back to my friends and be this isn't working, and we talk through it, and they're always so encouraging. So I think you will always have your bad days and your days where you feel nothing's really working out, or perhaps something isn't going how it should go, and it's just good to have a really good support network. So
You've been listening to The Afflatus. If you like what you have heard, do us a favor and share the episode with your network on social media. It helps. If you would like to know more about the show or share your opinion on the episodes, connect with us on facebook.com/unciafilms. That's facebook.com/UNCIAFILMS. If you would like to support the crowdfunding campaign of my latest film, The Doorbell, then click on the link mentioned in the description. Even a single dollar helps. Thank you so much for listening to The Afflatus.